here we are, day one of the job site. David Odell with Odell Complete Concrete. We're going to be removing and replacing this driveway right here. You can see it's in bad shape. This soil is super expansive, and it's not just the surface. I mean, this goes 4 feet deep of pure clay adobe. It's heaving, it's lifting, it's shifting, it's just drifting. I've got a little lowboy dumpster out here. I've got my usual Vermeer with the tracks on it. I'm not sure what I'm going to get into once I open this driveway up as far as soil conditions go, but like I said, it's really bad ground. So initially what I do with the breakers, I break around the perimeter. That way I don't disturb the garage floor and I can lift sections out. Once I started opening the driveway up, I realized how soft this soil was. Really a lot of water on it. And over the years, the water has been going through all the cracks in the driveway, and then of course the lawn on both sides. So it's got a lot of water underneath the concrete area. Now, any other tractor in this soil condition would have got buried. You wouldn't have been able to do anything. You might as well just park your tractor. If you had a wheel loader here, you might as well just left it in the street, because it wouldn't have drove over this or even pushed forward. It would have just spun its wheels. This little unit here is floating over the top because it has the long tracks, and it's fairly light. It's only about 3,500 pounds. So I was fortunate to have this, in other words, at this time. Now, the thing about working with clay is that when you do pour concrete on clay or expansive soil, you want to pour on it when it's at its most saturated level. In other words, its wettest condition, because that's when it's expanded the most. So that way, when you put the concrete on it like that, it can't get any worse. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to grade it out while it's wet, because if you let it dry, once you pull that concrete out and it were to dry, after you put the ruts in it and tire marks, it'd be very difficult to regrade it. So you have to grade it while it's wet. And then what I did is I just back dragged it with the bucket. I got it really flat just with the back of the bucket the same day I removed the concrete. This is the second day, and you can see how the ground is dried up a little bit and it's a little bit more stable. Although the sprinklers did go on, unfortunately, while we were gone, and it did get wet on the other side of the yard. And you'll notice that, how it stuck to my boots. So you can see how wet it is on this side of the yard here. So we're going to have to just pack it in, get the excess out. After we stomp around in it with our feet, it kind of distorted it. You could take a foot out of here and put some base on it, but you'd still end up with expansive soil underneath the base. So you're going to have the same problem regardless. So what I chose to do to save the customer some money rather than upcharging them, which typically you'd probably get a big old upcharge on a job like this. We go, oh, this is expansive soil, this is muddy, we can't pour on it. Let's take a foot of dirt out it, a foot of soil out of here. Let's bring in some road base. Let's do this and do that. But for me, I'm thinking, well, how can I do it and not upcharge? So what I did here is I just upgraded the concrete, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to build a bridge. I want to put rebar in it, and I'm going to put some super high PSI concrete in here with some fiber mesh. I'm going to bridge this whole thing. I'm going to key it under the city sidewalk. I'm going to dowel the existing, and it's not going to go anywhere. Then of course I'm going to put my joints at 7-foot spacing rather than my usual 10. And I can do all that for a no upcharge, because this is my standard procedure anyway. Now we doweled into the garage floor here, as you can see. Knowing some cases I wouldn't dowel into the garage floor if depending on the soil conditions, but in this case I knew that could be an issue. If your driveway starts to go up above that garage floor, you're going to have a water problem in there at some point. So we've got the rebar in here, and what I chose to go with was the 3250 city mix, which means no fly ash, pure cement, high PSI. I've got my screed pins there in the middle, and I just drove a 16 duplex through it just to set an overhead screed on it, and I'll just ride my rod off of that. Now I don't know if I show it, but at the city sidewalk, front of city sidewalk, instead of doweling into it, because city sidewalks come out pretty frequently compared to on-site stuff because of trees and small parkways disrupting the sidewalk. Instead of doweling in, what I did was I actually dug underneath the city sidewalk. That way I keyed underneath it with this driveway, so the driveway can't go up without bringing the sidewalk up with it. So everything moves as one, in other words. Right here we're running the 4-foot magnesium bowl float with a rocker arm on there. The benefits of the rocker arm is not just to be able to go longer distances, but it's also to avoid obstacles behind you. Short walls, vehicles, other things that may be behind you. So right here I'm running the bowl float perpendicular to the rod board, which is ideal. That's what you want to try to achieve, but in a lot of cases you can't because you're boxed in. So you're not going to be able to pull this off. Another choice is to try to get it on a 45-degree angle. Any kind of angle would be nice, but sometimes you might be able to just come straight back with the rod. But perpendicular is ideal because now you've got two long straight edges working simultaneously to get a flat surface. I did add the fiber mesh on site, which I always do because it's a lot less money. Doing it that way, I can do it for $3 a yard, $3 a pound of fiber mesh, which I happen to sell on my storefront, versus $8.50 a pound through the concrete distributors. I have my brother Darren on this job, in this particular job. He's been on a few jobs with me. And you might see him here wandering around. He was actually on the rod with Bobby. I was bull floating it. So on the joint pattern, we're going 7 foot. We're splitting it right up the middle. Actually, they're 8x8s because we got a 16-foot wide driveway, and we got one down the middle, so we know it's 8 that way. And I believe we have 7 or 8 the other direction as well. which is ideal for this particular scenario on this kind of ground. Initially on these joints, what we did was we ran the 4-foot cutter that was kind of handmade by Bobby. And what the nice thing about when they're 4 foot long, you get a really straight joint. And then you let it set up a little bit, and then you run your normal joint, your 1/2 inch radius, 3/4 inch deep walking joiner. Now here's your 10-inch wide, 1/2 inch radius walking edger. You notice how it leaves that line on the outer side of the walking joiner? Well, you want to see that initially. You don't want to see it when you're completed, but you want to see it when you're using it, because that means you're holding your edger flat. If you don't see it, that means your edger is angled and you may have a rolled edge. Now as the concrete gets harder, you can really bear down on that edge just to get the radius and focus on that, because you're not going to move the concrete much when it's harder, so you don't have to worry about rolled edges. We got all our joints, we have our edge in. Now we're hitting it with a funny trowel in the middle. Knock out all those edge lines, joiner lines. A little cream will fall into that cavity of the joiners, and that's good to some extent. That way when you run again, you have some cream to pull through that joint. This particular mix design that I used, we didn't have a whole lot of time to work it. There wasn't any real bleed water, even though the ground was super saturated. With this particular mix, which is really nice, it goes off. Now here's the brooming technique. I'm brooming just to the joint, that way I don't see an overlap mark and I don't have to pull it all the way across. And I can really detail the broom that way by focusing on square by square. That's a 50% nylon, 50% horsehair broom. Now here's the concrete curing compound that I sprayed on there. We just kind of missed that and we went into this. This is the second day. We stripped the forms, we backfilled the edges, and we threw some water on here just to kind of clean it up. Now this is the standard how it looks when it's curing out. We also had some curing compound on here from the day before. This will get super white because of the mix design. It'll get really white and pure without any spots on it. Some concrete will dry spotty and such, but this concrete will dry bone white. And that's due to the high PSI. A lot of cement in there. Anyway, thank you for watching, and let me know how you like my new intro. I'm interested because that's kind of my new thing on the job site. Have a good one.